Hi, hello. My name is Ben, and I'm your host. Welcome to Little Dead Aliens, the podcast where I and sometimes a guest watch an episode of The X Files and then give horror movie recommendations. And with me today, I have Doug. Hello, Doug.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about the X-Files.
Yeah, me too. If you'd like to just introduce yourself, and you are also in the Glitterjaw Collective, and you are in
Mhm.
a few podcasts.
Yeah, I have a bunch of shows on Glitterjaw. Derek, my co-host for many of those shows, was on recently and talked about a bunch of them. So if you heard his episode, get ready to hear him again. But I do a show called Walloping Web Snappers, which is a weekly deep dive into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made. We do one called Screonk, which we uh, do monthly and watch all of Godzilla's movies. Derek was a huge Godzilla fan. I had never seen any, so this is my education in the way of Godzilla. Before that, and still sometimes we do Falling with Style, which was a Pixar movie version of that, where I'm a huge Pixar fan. Derek had not seen a ton of them. And then I do one without Derek, but with my friend Katie, called Novel Gaming, where we catch up on the books and video games and sometimes other media that we've been enjoying lately.
Nice. Okay, so I will say that novel gaming I do like to listen to a lot because I'm also a book nerd
Hell yeah.
and like video games. So I like to ask a get to know you question. So for you, I'm going to ask, what is a book that you've read that you think that Scully would also enjoy?
Ooh, I feel like this is hard because I feel like Scully, I'm sure, has hobbies, but they're not featured. Or if her hobbies are featured, it's like being like skeptic and reading science and studies and writing for journals. So like a lot of what I read is like sci-fi and fantasy, which I don't think she'd enjoy. But I am reading a book right now called Escape, which is a fiction book by Stephen Fishback, who is a two-time reality television contestant. I don't think she'd like that, but I do think she would like sort of what I consider a companion to it, which is a nonfiction book called Cue the Sun, which is all about reality TV production. And so I don't think she would like reality TV very much because there's a lot of like smoke and mirrors and illusions and like presenting this sort of, glossy version of unscripted TV. But I do think she would enjoy reading about the sort of reality of reality TV, because then it's like behind the curtain, everything is explained, everything is out in the open. All the things that people are sort of wowed by on the TV screen are actually all these little machinations behind the scenes. So, of the things that I read, that might be the closest to the type of thing she would enjoy.
Nice. I think she would enjoy that. Part of me really believes that she would be into like some really trashy fiction, like just bad fiction to read in the tub
Yeah.
to like escape, and that would be like her sort of guilty pleasure. But yeah, so like I think she would be interested in TV and the trashiness of it, but not want to fully commit. So
Yeah. Not
that
like an
sounds right.
enjoyer of it, but fascinated by it. You know what I mean?
Yes, exact. Yeah, that sounds very Scully. Okay, so before we get into the episode, do you want to tell me a little bit about your relationship and history with the X Files and horror, even?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't grow up watching The X-Files because it was scary, just like I didn't grow up watching horror movies because they were scary.
Okay,
The X-Files has that theme song that, like, the moment I heard it, I was like, this is my time to leave or change the channel because it's spooky. As a kid, I was afraid of everything, even like commercials for scary movies. So it wasn't until like high school that I finally was like, I'm sick of being scared of everything and I will now watch scary movies on purpose. And then it wasn't until college, when a friend recommended I watch the X Files. So it wasn't until college that I watched any X Files, and I still haven't finished the X Files, but I watched a ton of it in college, and now because you're doing this, have started to rewatch it, which is a wonderful experience. I'm glad to be
nice,
on one of the earlier episodes, I will say.
awesome. Yeah, I keep getting people saying that they're like, "Oh, I'm rewatching or I'm starting it um, because of the show," and
Hmm.
that's like the best news I can ever hear.
Yeah.
Um, so do you enjoy X Files and horror now, or you're still a
Yes.
little?
Yes, I do. I like the X Files a lot. I really loved it when I was watching it. I didn't realize when I was watching it, like, how significant it was. Like, obviously, I knew it was a popular show, I knew it was a big deal, but I didn't realize that the sort of monster of the week versus lore episode thing was such a like critical piece of it. I just kind of was like taking it as it came. And obviously now appreciate it now that I'm a little bit more versed. And then horror, I do like horror a lot. I mean, I really truly did in high school decide like I'm sick of being afraid of everything and would force myself to watch scary movies before I went to bed and then think of all the ways that nothing in that movie could ever happen to me. And I like exposure therapied myself out of being afraid of scary movies. So I enjoy them a lot now. And I'm glad to know other people who like them because I feel like it's hard to convince people to like horror movies if they don't. So finding the people who will talk to you about them is such a gem and such a treasure.
True. Yeah, that's great. I love the idea of little Doug just like forcing himself
Oh
to
yeah.
love horror. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
I didn't watch much horror in high school, or before. My parents were very strict, so I wasn't really able to watch stuff until
Mhm.
later in high school. And in my 20s is sort of when I got more into it. So yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. All right. So this week we watched Conduit. And do you want to tell us what happens in the episode?
Sure. Yeah. So in this one, Mulder and Scully are investigating a missing teenager named Ruby. And they're doing this in the wake of Ruby's mom experiencing what we are led to believe and what she believes is an alien abduction of some kind. And so when they go to investigate this, they learn a few things. One, that Darlene, this mom, has experienced stuff like this before and has talked about these experiences kind of her whole life in this town. And that Ruby is kind of like trouble kid in the eyes of like the town or at least the police. So no one's really taking the mom Darlene or Ruby's disappearance seriously, which I think is a really important and probably to me the most interesting thing about this episode. What's interesting though is there's all these little like detours and all these like little distractions that happen as Mulder and Scully are trying to figure out what happened to Ruby. And you meet all these characters that are sort of these maybe it was this, maybe it was that. So you end up meeting Ruby's younger brother, who's like much younger than her, who after she disappears is like receiving some kind of like satellite transmissions and transcribing them and is maybe connected in some way to what Ruby is experiencing or what his mom is experiencing. You also meet this girl in the library who is like, "Oh, I know what happened to Ruby. Ruby got pregnant and ran off with her boyfriend Greg." And that turns out to be not exactly the case either. And then you meet these like this like biker gang and this like hot biker bartender in the bar, and they all believe in UFOs, and like go to the same place where Ruby disappeared. And these are all like interesting elements, but ultimately in the end, Mulder and Scully return to the site of Ruby's disappearance, and she just kind of returns, and all these other elements are kind of there, but ultimately she just returns. There's one thing that kind of wrinkles things where like the NSA gets involved and it means that like Darlene doesn't trust Mulder and Scully anymore. And so by the end of it, once Ruby's back, the mom is like, "We don't want to talk to Mulder and Scully anymore. I don't want my daughter to talk to you. We're actually just going to live a totally normal life now. Don't bother us." And it's really sad. And that's kind of how the episode ends.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this episode. It feels some of the subplots feel very like I saw Twin Peaks once.
Yes, 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 dude. Seriously. Like, it's funny because what you're doing is like pairing these episodes with other properties. And this one is like honestly kind of a hard one, not because there aren't things to pair it with, but because it's such a like collage of direct references and like vibes. And one of them is Twin Peaks. It's like it would be impossible not to bring it up
Yeah, for
talking about this
sure.
episode.
Yeah, this is one that I almost skipped because I was like, it's too much like the pilot where it's just about a abduction.
Mhm.
But there's also then I was like, but there's so much other stuff going on, like with the kid, and so yeah, it's an odd episode. I think sort of like Squeeze. There's like a lot going on,
Mhm.
and there may be too many ideas. Somehow it still sort of works. This is not one of my favorite episodes by far, but I think it's sort of a forgettable one. But
I enjoy watching, but when I stop to think about it, I'm like, I don't know that that was like a good episode of television. I just kind of enjoyed myself while it was on, you know?
yeah, I would agree with that. I think what, like you said, what stood out is sort of the idea that the So the cop is like really anti Ruby, and
Mhm.
that felt like crazy to me. uh,
Yes.
where he's just like, whatever happened to her, she deserved it.
Yes.
And that's it's really shocking. And I think we still see that sort of stuff in television.
Mhm.
Um, maybe it is as blatant, but it's like very blatant, just like she was like just slut shaming, just doesn't care about this girl at all, isn't
Mhm.
really putting any effort into it. And one of the things I really love about Mulder and Scully is they're always on the side of the victim, regardless of who the victim is. And we see that again here, which is
Yeah.
really cool. So yeah, it's a strange episode.
Yeah, my favorite moment is when Mulder is talking to that, like, I guess, chief of police or police officer. It's a small town, so who knows? But, like, talking to him and just calls him out and says, like, "Wait, so you don't trust this mom and you think this girl is, like, a troublemaker, so you just ignored their statements." And the cop doesn't really know what to say. Like, I don't know that he's ever been called out like that, and it's really nice to see.
Yeah, it is nice. But yeah, okay. So I guess we could just get into some recommendations. First thing I like to talk about is themes that we see in this episode. There was only one that really stood out to me. So if you wanted to share yours first, or I can go first.
Sure. Yeah, there were a couple that I pulled out of it. One, I do think it's good that you included this episode because even though you're not charting the lore of the X-Files, I do think it would be weird not to talk about at points along the way Fox Mulder's obsession with cases that like mirror or parallel his sister's disappearance. And this is kind of like the first big scratching off of that. And so I do think even though the episode isn't about like grief turned into obsession, I do think it's worth mentioning that that gets called out by Scully here in this episode. And like horror has tons of movies that are about grief explicitly. I mean, you have like really iconic recent ones like Hereditary or The Babadook that are very much about grief, or you even have ones that are like grief turned into obsession, like Pet Cemetery or Bring Her Back. But I think what's interesting about this episode is that Scully has to call Mulder out, and Mulder has this sort of like quiet, stoic reaction that says, like, it's not about that, even though we all know it's about that. And I think a movie that really reminds me of that specific type of feeling is 2017's The Ritual, which is about these guys who recently had one of their friends die, and go on this like hike in Sweden that he really wanted to go on, and their sort of obsession with making sure this hike happens to sort of mask or stand in for their grief is what brings them to the horror circumstances of that movie. And I think there is kind of a parallel here where the characters are not willing to totally admit that what they're doing is one of the ways they're coping with their specific grief. And I think that Scully has to specifically call that out in Mulder in this episode.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. And I'm glad you brought that up because it is something I wanted to mention in the recap and forgot. But yeah, I think this is the first episode where we really focus in on like, okay, this happened to Mulder as a child. His sister is missing, and it's really like the fuel behind a lot of what he's doing.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, that's a really interesting point, and I do like the idea of yeah, grief turned to obsession. That's
And
really
like an
interesting.
sort of seemingly unrelated obsession. I know that this is like a case that parallels his sister's case, but this idea that like I'm going to pour myself into this other project and then sort of in an unhealthy way, like tie my grief to the success of that project. I mean, that's what Scully says, right? Like finding this girl is not going to bring your sister back.
Right. Which is a theme that comes up a lot, even on cases that aren't about abduction. Mulder
Hmm.
falls into that a lot.
Yeah.
And Scully has to be sort of his anchor to like, um,
I
yeah,
like that
awesome.
stuff. I like grief movies a lot. I like, I don't know why, but I like where somebody is like not addressing it and it manifests in like some weird way. Like there was a movie recently called H is for Hawk, where this woman can't deal with her grief, and so she gets into like falconing with like this really dangerous hawk, and everyone's like, "What are you doing with this hawk?" And it's like, it's just grief, baby.
Yeah. I think I like those kind of movies too. Everything I'm thinking of is pretty like on the nose though.
Hmm.
I don't know if you saw the movie A Dark Song.
Mm-mm. What's this
It's a
one?
it's about a woman who she lost, I believe it's her son. It's been a while since I've seen it, but she hires this person to come in and do this like really long ritual with her that's supposed to grant her a wish, which
Ooh.
she is going to use to bring back her son.
Ooh.
It's really good. It's like a slow burn, but like
Mhm.
the ending is like a really good payoff. So yeah, but that's very
Sounds
much like about grief.
sounds very much up my alley.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's great. The only theme that really stuck out for me is the idea of like who to trust and like not trusting people. Um, as you mentioned, like Darlene, the mother doesn't really trust anyone. She's used to being dismissed because she, as a kid, experienced stuff with UFOs and aliens and stuff. Everyone in this town seems to, which is kind of crazy. Um,
But they don't believe her.
you're right. And the cops are dismissive when her daughter's missing. Mulder shows up and he believes her, and she sort of clings to that. And then, Scully tells the NSA, I guess that's what happened is Scully mentioned these drawings to someone, and NSA gets involved, and then Darlene doesn't trust him anymore.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of like mistrust. I like stories where you're not sure if you can trust the main character, like if
Mhm.
what they're going through is real and actual, or if it's like a figment of their imagination.
Yep, yep. Love an unreliable narrator for all kinds
Yeah.
of reasons.
Yeah, it's great. I don't know if I see that here as much. We're never really meant to think like, oh, this is not real. This didn't actually happen to Ruby because it's X Files. So
Mhm.
they're like, yes, it is aliens for sure. Um, but a few movies that I thought of where this sort of comes into play is, I don't know if you saw Oculus from 2013.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this one up actually. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite movies about like that idea of like, is what's happening to this person real or not?
Mhm.
And I think it does it in a really interesting way. It's about a girl and her brother, and she finds this mirror that supposedly haunted them as children and caused her parents to kill each other.
Mhm.
Um, and she's found this mirror and she's documenting with all these cameras about what happened with this mirror so she can prove that this happened. And her brother doesn't really believe her, and he's been, I think, in like a psychotherapy center.
Yeah, I mean, I think like in a horror movie sense, he's just been like thrown in an asylum, you know what I mean? And I
Right.
think he's kind of like uh I think he's like convinced that what he experienced didn't happen. So then when he gets out, he also doesn't believe his sister, I think, right?
Right. Exactly. And so, yeah, it's just about a night with this creepy mirror, and you're not sure what's real and what isn't, even throughout the movie. So it's really good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Another one that fits that I really like that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is a movie called I Trap the Devil from 2019, which is about a guy who, similar to Oculus, a guy who returns to his family home where his brother lives, and his brother is convinced that he's trapped the devil in their basement. And
Whoa.
so it's set on Christmas, so it is like a Christmas horror movie,
Mhm.
but, his brother and his wife are there for Christmas, and they're like, "What's going on? You don't have the devil in the basement." And so that just sort of plays out as you might expect from a horror movie, without
Yeah.
spoiling anything, but it's also a really interesting take on this idea of, like, is what's happening real or not? Who
You know what's
can you
funny?
trust?
You know what's funny is it reminds me of I'm sure it's very different, but it reminds me of Begonia where when have you seen that?
Yes.
When you're watching that movie, like even if you are 100% confident you know what's happening, there's not really a way to know what's happening until it is explicitly told to you at the end. And there are times throughout that movie where I'm like, I guess right now I believe this person, or maybe at this point I believe this person. But being trapped in a basement is what reminded me of Begonia.
Yes, very much. I love Begonia, and I think that, yeah, there's a lot of that going on where you're like, "What's real? What isn't?
Right.
Is what I'm seeing real? Is this ending real? Like, what's
Right.
happening?"
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
I really love Yorgos, though, so
Hmm.
I was all in.
Yeah, me too.
Um, Another one I wanted to mention is It's What's Inside from 2024, which is the movie where a group of friends, I think it's a Netflix movie, a group of
Mm.
friends gets together for a wedding, and one of them has this contraption where switch consciousnesses. And so
What?
they're playing this game
It's
where
like a Freaky Friday horror movie?
yes, um, it's more
That's
thriller than horror, I
amazing.
would say. But yeah, they're playing a game where they change consciousness, sorry,
I don't know what the plural would
into
be.
each other's bodies, and then they're trying to guess who is who. And then, it is horror adjacent, so bad things happen, and then they have to, like, figure stuff out, but it was a
Whoa.
lot of fun.
That makes a lot of sense considering what else you have on this list, which is Cry Wolf, which I also have seen. That is one that I saw, and I think it's a clever pick because that one is kind of like, if folks haven't seen Cry Wolf, it's like a horror movie based around the idea of the game Werewolf or Mafia, or nowadays like Among Us, where there's like an imposter and no one knows who the murderer is, which sounds like a normal slasher, but in this case it's like in the universe that Werewolf is this game that they play with each other. And I think it makes for a movie where you as an audience member have a hard time believing the stories they're telling each other because you're expecting them to lie. And then the main characters don't necessarily know because they're also so used to lying to each other, which makes for kind of a fun, unreliable sort of story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Cry Wolf, I always like to joke, is like the slasher that's not a slasher. It's just
Hmm.
pretending to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and, yeah, they're just playing this game, and then they take the game one step further by trying to convince their school that there's an actual serial killer, and
Hmm.
then people are showing up dead. So, yeah, it's a fun one. I don't now thinking about it, I'm like, "How did I get from this episode of X-Files to this?" But I guess that's sort of the fun of the show.
Well, I think this episode is hard because I think so much of what we see are like it's kind of like a grab bag of like tropes and sci-fi vibes, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
One thing that I thought of when I saw that you had Trust kind of listed was 2024's Cuckoo, and the reason I thought of that is because it specifically also has some like Twin Peaks cabin sort of lodge aesthetic vibes to it, and it has a teenage girl who is sort of like this troublemaker teen that people don't believe because she's like, I don't know, just pitching a fit or whatever. Like there's an abduction element to it. She ends up in an accident and then ends up questioning like her own sort of perspective on things. It also, like this X-Files episode, has like one kind of character who does give her the benefit of the doubt, kind of like Mulder gives her the benefit of the doubt, but they're also both kind of outcasts in the person that trusts them. So I think there's something there. It's just, it's hard to pin down like one specific theme or one specific trope that like characterizes this episode of the X-Files, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Cuckoo was also a really weird movie, just like
Very.
this is a very weird episode.
Yes. Yes. It's, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is worth bringing up. Like I wouldn't have thought it was related, but that's kind of how this episode goes, you know?
Yeah, I have found when looking at stuff and making lists for the show that I'm like, "Oh, wait, this also goes in with this,"
Mhm.
and as I talk with people, yeah, there's those you start to pull those threads of different things, and it's like, "Wait, no, this does fit."
Mhm.
Um, any other themes that you'd like to talk about?
I do think that with Darlene the mom being like a main character in like central to the story and not being trusted by the town and law enforcement because she's like the crazy lady is like a specific like brand of not trusting in horror movies. I mean, horror movies rely on characters knowing something is true and other people not believing them. But I think the reason people don't believe Darlene is because she is seen as just, oh, that crazy lady over there, even though we know she's telling the truth. And I don't know, I couldn't think of a ton of examples of where that character isn't just like a creepy old lady omen or just like, you know, kind of like a prop almost. But I do think the first season of Stranger Things, Joyce is treated that way, where she is like trying to find her kid and she's trying to do it in such a determined way. And she is so confident in what she's experiencing that it makes everyone kind of just view her as like the town crazy, you know?
Right, for sure. She's also a single mother, which
Yep. Yeah,
Darlene is
totally.
also a single mother, and I think that sort of will segue us into some tropes too, because one of the tropes I wrote down is like kids that are drawing weird things or prophetic drawings or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
And we also get that in Stranger Things with Will.
Mhm.
Um, and again, sort of like Mulder with the kid who is like, this means something. This isn't just doodles. Joyce sort of believes Will and is like, what is this? Like, what let's figure out what this is, we see later in the season. So I think Stranger Things really fits with a lot of the themes and tropes that we're seeing in this episode.
I think Stranger Things is probably inspired by a lot of things that the X-Files was also inspired by, while also being inspired by the X-Files, you know? Like, so I think it
Right.
makes a lot of sense. The kid drawing stuff in this episode is so interesting to me because usually a kid drawing something is like a premonition or it is like a demonstration of something the kid shouldn't know that is revealed to be like wider spread than the protagonist realized. So in this episode, it's like kind of confusing what this even means because the kid is like transcribing binary code from like a defense satellite. And at first, we're told that these are like these random snippets of like human discovery, like almost as if they were like pieces of that golden record that we shot out into space. But then it also just turns out that it's like a portrait of his sister, but the portrait of his sister doesn't like lead them anywhere. So like what is the I like it. I think it's extremely effective. I love anytime like a big drawing is revealed, but like what is the point of this kid transcribing this stuff? Help me out.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't think there is a point. Even in the show, they're like, well, this doesn't really mean anything. We don't know what this mean or how it connects. So my
But it's
guess
like
was it.
literally like a helix in there and like it's like so strange.
Yeah. I very much was like when because the scientist is like telling them all the different things that he's transcribing or whatever. And to me, like my first thought was too like, oh, that's like the golden record stuff, right?
Right, yeah.
Um, which that's not a connection they made. So
No.
it
I kept waiting for
um
someone to bring it up.
so and then it's like the portrait of his sister is like I think we're supposed to understand that like the aliens are sending him this information that
Mhm.
took his sister. So maybe it's like just your sister's okay. Here's a picture of her.
Yeah, like, for
I don't really
Mulder, it
know.
makes sense, right? Like, for Mulder would be like, "Oh, this must be evidence that she is in fact alive," which he already kinda believed, right? I wanna know what Scully thinks of that drawing. Like, that's what I truly wanna know. She probably would just chalk it up to, like, "Oh, it was never significant, and he was just, like, coping with the loss of his sister by making this portrait," right? Like,
Right.
she probably thought it was great because it, like, disproved something.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this is I mean, this is classic. I mean, I love this kind of thing where, like, they reveal the fucked up little drawing that some kid has made. It's, like, one of my
Right.
favorite things in movies.
Yeah, me too. I don't really know why they put this in other than like maybe it was gonna be something that would come up later,
Mm.
like in the lore, like it would be embedded in like the abduction lore of the show, and then they just decided
Oh,
not to do that.
imagine that. Imagine if, like, the piece because they specifically say everything he's transcribing is partial, like, it's pieces, and
Mm,
Mulder says, like, it's like someone switching channels. That would be cool if, like, the other pieces were sort of filled in along the way in different ways.
right. So maybe it's just an idea they had that they never planned out.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Hmm.
it doesn't make a ton of sense in the episode other than it's another creepy element.
Yeah, it's weird vibes.
Yeah. But some movies that I think of when I think of this is Insidious from 2010. The
Mhm.
kid is drawing creepy stuff, and then The Ring and to the American remake,
Oh, yeah.
that kid is always drawing creepy stuff. I mean, he's just creepy, but he's always drawing creepy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and in his case, he's doing the thing where it's, like, repetitive, right? Like, he's drawing the same
Mhm.
thing kinda over and over, which I think makes it even creepier. You mentioned Insidious. I also think Sinister, even though Sinister doesn't have, like, the creepiest drawings in a vacuum, I think Sinister uses the creepy drawing in a really good way because in that movie, is it Ethan Hawke is like trying to make some sort of like documentary thing about these people that were killed and it's really violent and fucked up and so he's been trying to make sure that his kid has no exposure to it and is successful until he realizes like the kid has been drawing images of what happened to the family uh without having seen what's going on. And it's just like a really, I think it's a good use of that, even though it's like a bunch of stick figures.
Yeah, Sinister, I almost wrote down as well. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Sinister's so good. Like, I think people forget how good it is.
Can I only watched it for the first time like a few months ago because I was looking at that list that they produce each year, which is like the scariest movies by like heart rate and whatever. And that one's always at or near the top. And so I finally watched it. And, no notes. It's good.
Yeah, it's good. The second one's really bad, but the first
Oh
one's
no. Bummer.
yeah, just watch the second one.
Ooh, can't
It's a
wait.
trip. Yeah.
I think the Mothman Prophecies has some of the greatest fucked up. They're not by a kid, but I do think the Mothman Prophecies has some of the best sort of like fucked up obsessive drawings in it.
Yeah, it's been so long since I've seen that it came up when I was looking into that sort of idea, but I hadn't seen it in so long that I didn't have the context for the drawings, so
It's like very post trauma where like the wife gets into an accident and while she's in the hospital just draws the Mothman over and over and over again. And then her husband like finds that sketchbook full of those drawings. And I think the implication is that like, oh shit, she saw something and that's why the car crashed. I haven't watched it in a long time either. I just, those images of the drawings have never like left me because they're so creepy. That was one of the movies I watched in high school to like get used to scary movies. So I'm sure that's also part of why it's embedded in my brain.
nice. Yeah, no, that's a really good fit. I'll have to rewatch that soon. So the next sort of trope that I thought about was also like signals from the TV, which is also just a brief thing that they don't bring up again. They're just like the kid is like, I'm getting it from the TV. That's why I'm writing all these numbers. Um,
Right. Points at
which
the
late,
TV from there.
yeah. And later, I don't think he is getting it from the TV. I think he's just directly in it. It doesn't matter. But obviously, the first one that comes to mind is Poltergeist from 1982 with Carol Ann in front of the TV.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, this is a direct reference, right? Like this can't be anything but. I mean, it's like a little blonde child standing in front of a TV with nothing on it. Like,
right.
I, I mean, I guess I don't know if Poltergeist was the first movie to do that, but I mean, if you're doing it, you're referencing Poltergeist.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. There's another one called White Noise from 2005, which I have seen. It has Michael Keaton in it, and I don't remember much about it. I just know that he has lost his wife. Like she's not missing; she dies, but
Mhm.
he is looking into finding her and communicating with her through white noise and like
Mm.
static of TVs and stuff. So again, one that I feel like I should rewatch or should have rewatched before the show. But
It sounds familiar.
yeah, and then also in The Ring, you have all the staticky TV and creepy TV stuff, so
Yeah. Yeah, there's like the literal TV aspect of it, but I also do love a movie where a kid is just like getting messages. They're not like the main character, but they're like getting messages from somewhere and it takes a while, or maybe in this case you never know where those messages are coming from. And these are like not TV or very literal examples of it, but there are a couple recent movies. Imaginary was one of those where like there's this creepy little girl who also does drawings actually,
mhm.
who's getting messages from like a teddy bear and it turns out it's like an imaginary friend, but like imaginary friends are real. And then this is actually a bad example, but I think about this movie a lot because I feel like it could have been so good and it was so bad. Did you see the movie Afraid, that like evil AI movie with
I
I don't remember
I
who all was in
didn't.
it.
I literally almost watched it this past weekend with a friend, though.
It's bad. Like, don't get me wrong, it's bad, but it has a lot of really good ideas. So I would recommend you watching it just as somebody who likes horror. But that's one where like one of the kids talks with the AI and the parents don't know he's doing it. And I think that is interesting. Just like a kid having some sort of channel to some paranormal force that the parents aren't totally aware of, I think is fun.
For sure. Yeah, I really love that too, and, like, it's one of those things where I can't think of a specific instance really, but it like, in my brain, I just know those moments where the kid is like or the parent or someone is like, "Who are you talking to?" And they're like, "Blah,
Right.
blah, blah, Mr. Creepy Guy."
Right. Yeah.
And the parents are like, "That's so cute, go to bed." And it's like, yeah,
Mr. Creepy
turn
Guy is real.
right. Um, I know in the others, the kid draws things, and then I think Nicole Kidman is like, "What are these numbers?" And the kid is like, "That's how many times I've seen
Oh,
them,"
yeah,
which is
and isn't
pretty
it, like,
creepy.
the family plus 1 character, and the 1 character has, like, a higher number than everybody else or something like that?
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah,
ooh, that's a
it's
oh, yeah, that's a good use of it.
it's creepy. When I was looking up examples of, like, kids drawing creepy things in horror movies,
Mhm,
a lot of them were that, of, like, an image of the family and then something else, like
mhm.
another creepy person, and the parents are never like, "Wait, what's up with this? What's
It's
this get?"
because, like, kids just draw kind of what they observe, and a lot of times don't have, like, much of a perspective difference between their imagination and what they're actually experiencing, which is what makes it creepy because like you write it off as like imagination, but it just as easily could be something they saw. You know, like when a kid talks about seeing a guy in the closet or whatever, it's like, oh, they could just be having a nightmare or be scared. But like if the kid's young enough, they also literally could have just seen a person in the closet.
Right. Yeah. I've seen too many horror movies that if I did have children and they started drawing creepy things, I would be like, "We're
Yeah.
moving. We're burning this house down.
Right. Right, exactly.
We
I
gotta
do love
go."
stories of, like, my kid said this fucked up thing to me last night and then walked away. Like, those are always very funny to me.
Yeah, they're so good. Yeah. I wish I had some examples, but I don't.
I
I
did
have
just
some.
think of another drawing example that I would be remiss not to bring up. It's a Godzilla example, which is why I feel like I have to say it. A lot of Godzilla movies are, like, very obviously horror. This one is, like, maybe sci-fi existential horror, but one of my favorite kids drawing, psychic drawing, whatever moments is in Godzilla versus Biollante, where, like, they go to a classroom full of like psychic children. It's like an institute for psychic children. And the one character's like, oh, they've all been having the same dream. And then says, kids, show her what you've been dreaming of. And they all hold up pictures of Godzilla, like just a bunch of different pictures of Godzilla. And it's like not scary, but it's so effective. There's something about how they pull that off that like punches you in the gut, like, oh shit, they shouldn't have all felt that way. They shouldn't have all had that dream, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. I
It's
haven't
so
seen that,
good.
but
It's
it
so
sounds,
good.
yeah, that is awesome. Okay, and, I don't know if there are any tropes that you wanted to bring up. I only have the one
No,
more
we had
obvious
kind of the
one.
same ones, like the message like kids getting messages, kids drawing things, I think are the most tropey things outside of like all the alien stuff that I imagine will probably come up a lot
Right.
across the X-Files, you know?
Yeah, so, yeah, the last one, is all the abduction tropes are. I mean, I guess not all of them, but most of them are here. In this episode, we got, lights, we got temperature rising, we got people returning out of nowhere. Um,
Scorched nature.
right. I love when he's like, "Well, what could have turned this sand into glass?" And Scully's just like, "I don't know."
Oh, you know what's so funny about that though is like his first example of the trees being burnt only at the top, I think was like a fantastic example of something weird happened here. And then she suggests a lightning storm, and he says, oh, well, could a lightning storm turn sand to glass? And I think the literal answer is yes. I think that's
Yeah,
what happens when lightning hits sand.
yeah. I
Mulder,
think,
I
yeah,
think you're wrong.
it's very much that.
I
Yeah.
think you played yourself.
I think Scully is just so used to him at this point, and we're
Hmm.
discovering how close they are that she's just like, "It doesn't matter what I say, he
Right.
thinks it's aliens, so
Right. Right. Go off, Mulder.
let's just." Yeah, just keep going. So, I'll talk about some more abduction movies. Dark Skies from 2013, uh, the kid in this one also draws aliens and creepy stuff, so there's that. But this is one of my favorite abduction alien movies. I don't think there's much abduction happening. We don't see any of the abduction happening. We don't,
Mm,
like, I think the kid is being abducted and then returned so quickly that people don't believe it's happening or whatever.
mm,
But there's some really creepy moments in this movie. It's also one of those where this is sort of a cop out in a lot of horror movies where they go to someone with all the information about their problem, and then that person is like, "It doesn't matter what you do or where you go, it will follow you." So, there's that going on.
mhm,
I don't know if you've seen this movie.
mm-mm.
It's good. It's a good alien movie. Were there any alien movies that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think you have a good list here. And like anything I would think of, I think would be like just your most obvious Hollywood alien abduction movies, which, you've probably already brought up. Like I know you brought up Fire in the Sky, I think is what one is that do I have the order of those words right?
Yes.
Um and then obviously like Close Encounters has some stuff. I mean, even with just like his descent into madness and people not believing him, um but I don't know, those seem like obvious answers. You probably have better, more catered ones.
Well, so there is one from 2019 called Dark Encounters, which is not great, but it's basically about this family. Their daughter goes missing, presumably abducted, and then they all gather together like a year later, and alien stuff starts happening. I don't really give too much away, but it's a good abduction movie. Um, there's one from last year, 2025, called Descendant, about a man who is abducted, and then it's sort of his sort of trying to figure out if what he believes happened actually happened or not, and everyone around him doesn't believe him. Um, and his wife is pregnant, and he's sort of like losing it, which is a really sort of a more quiet abduction movie, and it does give like some resolution at the end, but it also goes along with the whole like, is what's happening real or not
Mhm.
aspect. Um, I mentioned The Forgotten in the pilot episode, which is with Julianne Moore. Her son is
Yeah.
abducted and she's trying to figure out what's going on, which is just a really good one and gives the perspective of the mother, sort
Mhm.
of like Darlene, rather than the person who's abducted. And there's one from 2024 called Jonah, which is the same, which is this woman is convinced that her son was abducted and he's back and he's like catatonic. And these two journalists, I think they're podcasters, who do like a paranormal show, go to visit her and like interview her and the kid to figure out if he was actually abducted or not.
I do like that specific perspective on the abduction, where it's from the perspective of like a caregiver, not necessarily the person who was abducted. This isn't an alien abduction movie, but like Changeling has that vibe. Like Changeling isn't meant to be necessarily like a scary movie, but it kind of is like for that reason. And like I think there's a lot to mine out of these like women especially uh who are like not being listened to because it's like so real, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. And there's a lot of speculation about actual people who, talk about being abducted and how that's sort of a place to put their trauma because they won't be
Mhm.
believed otherwise. uh, Especially women, where it's like these awful things happen to them, but people don't believe them. So they've turned it into this thing, alien abduction or whatever
Oh,
it is that they've turned it into, so that people will actually listen to what they're saying. Um, and
have you seen Mysterious Skin with like Joseph
yes,
Gordon-Levitt?
yeah.
Oh. That's what that
What?
reminds me of when you're talking about that specific like, like marriage of trauma and alien abduction.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. What a movie.
Ooh.
Um, I'm obsessed with Greg Araki, but that movie is a lot.
It's
After I
rough.
watched it, I was like, okay, I need a
It's rough.
break. Um, but yeah, it's a good fit here for sure if we're talking about like abduction as trauma, or like you said, obsession or grief turned into obsession or something else.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. All right. Any other movies you would like to talk about, or
I don't think so. There were actually, I mean, some of the ones that I thought of overlapped with yours, which actually made me feel good because I was like, all right, I'm in the right direction. So I think we got all mine.
okay, awesome. Yeah, I like when that happens too because it makes me feel like okay, I've picked some decent ones. Someone else had the same idea.
Right.
I did wanna mention a movie from 1998 called Mercury Rising, which
hmm
is not a horror movie, it's more like an action thriller movie. It has Bruce Willis and apparently Alec Baldwin in it, which I assuming why I liked it so much as, like, a preteen boy. Um, but my sister and I watched this movie a lot, and my younger brothers, and I don't remember a ton about it except for Bruce Willis is, like, some kind of cop or something, and he is protecting this kid who has autism, who has some kind of secrets or something, but he's like in my memory, he's like writing things out and like
Mm.
he has seen or witnessed and is writing out this thing that he's not supposed to. And Bruce Willis is trying to protect him from like the powers that be that want to get rid of him or silence him or something. Um, and I honestly don't remember much about it, but watching this episode, I was like, "Oh, this is like that movie." So
Yeah.
there might be something there. If anybody has seen it recently, or I guess I can watch it again and see. I don't know if it's aged well as far as like autism is concerned
Oh,
because it
sure.
was
Yeah.
in '98. So I'd be interested to see if it ages well or not.
Mhm.
But that movie came to mind for me
Well, there's that, like, Fox Mulder is friend to children element, where, like, he believes this kid, he will trust this kid, he will protect this kid.
for sure. Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to me about this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back, into X-Files. It's probably been, like, 10 years since I've watched any of it, so this is exciting.
Awesome. Well, I hope you had a good time. And if you want to tell the listeners where they can find you online,
Yeah, you can find me all over the place at Icky Booley, ICKYBOOLEY. And anything I'm making with Glitterjaw. So if you go to glitterjaw.com, you can find all those shows I mentioned: Walloping Web Snappers, Screonk, Falling with Style, and Novel Gaming. And then I'll pop up here and there on different shows. But if you're following me or you're following Glitterjaw, that's where you'll find all that stuff out. Oh, and Derek, the guy that I co-host so many shows with, and I do have a Patreon. It's called Walloping Web Snappers, but it supports all three shows that we do together, and that's just patreon.com/walloping web snappers. We do all kinds of additional stuff over there that we just kind of like, if it doesn't fit on the main feed, it goes over there. And there's now like, gosh, we've been doing it for maybe 5 years. There's like well over 100 just extra episodes of all kinds of stuff over there. So if you like what I'm doing, maybe check that out.
awesome. Yeah, everybody go check that out. And again, I'm Ben. You can find me at Little Dead Aliens pretty much everywhere. We're on glitterjaw.com as well. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.